Gloves Off is always on point. On point. Bringing you the best on current issues, community affairs, and the happenings around us. This segment of Gloves Off is brought to you by The Best, so pay them a visit. Check them out. This is Gloves Off.
Well. You're listening to Gloves Off with Professor Buitrón. Alright then, I say words on point, straightforward. No jibber jabber, everybody forward. Issues, facts and solution. Get it at Gloves Off with Professor Buitrón. Alright, one other thing is a revolution. Get it on point with Professor Buitrón. Gloves Off. No nonsense issues, politics, community. A better men follow reader. Gloves Off, a revolutionary show with everything that you need to know. With Professor Buitrón. Watch ya!
If you've ever wondered, if you ever had a clue what would happen if Batman, the Avengers, the X-Men fought the 47 Ronin, you will have great hitting, power strikes, and speed. This event will be known as the North Texas Stick Fighting Championships. It's open to all martial artists. This is where legends are formed, where they're forged, where they are founded. Sign up now. Call the number 956-401-4868 and look up the website at www.savate.biz. So remember, this is for serious martial artists. If you're not serious, sit back and whisper about the event. If not, we'll see you there.
We're back at you in Gloves Off, and today we have a great show with two individuals that care about secondary water source, and we're going to hear about the explanation why it's so important for us. Mr. Ruben Science, how are we doing today?
We're doing fine, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you for having us. And I hope you can show some knowledge because I'm ignorant of the fact of everything that's going on. Okay, Mr. James, how are we doing today?
Paul, doing great.
Awesome.
God.
I hear a lot of words and a lot of dialogue between different individuals about secondary water source. What is going on with secondary water source here in Laredo, Texas?
Well, what's going on here is that we all know that the Rio Grande River is our only source of water for Webb County and the city of Laredo. And we have some issues that is very publicly known. One is that the contamination of the river, first of all. Secondly, the river it's not getting the amount of water that normally it would get because of our drought conditions. And not only that, the lesser amounts of water that comes from the Rocky Mountains back up in the area of New Mexico and Colorado. So the limitation of water coming down from the water sources of the mountains, plus the contamination of the water, is putting the city of Laredo into a crucial situation about the availability of water, first of all, and then secondly, the effect that the contamination is having on the health of the citizens of Laredo. Therefore, a secondary water source is important because we need to have a source of water that is potable drinking water for the livelihood of this community. And we all know and have to accept that water is life. No water, no life. And that is what's happening here, that we need a secondary water source for the livelihood and the growth of this city.
Absolutely. And you said something else right there, contaminants and affecting health. What is going on with that? And can you elaborate on that? Because
well, about 3 or 4 months ago, the director of the health department for the county of Webb went before the city council of Laredo to stipulate that we're seeing a lot of illnesses that normally we're not seeing here before, especially among children that are getting ill from stomach cramps, diarrhea, etc., and contaminated wounds. The purpose of this reason for this impact that the medical directors are seeing is that children are not immune to the immunities that adults have. And a lot of illnesses are happening to the younger children, so it's becoming a health hazard. And we need to keep that in mind because this pertains to the livelihood of the future citizens and the leaders of the city. So that in itself is a problem, the contamination of the water. Further, the city of Laredo now is having to spend more than $1 million a year in this coming year for buying chemicals to purify this water and to make it potable. That is above the amount of money that the city is already paying. We know that that's in the budget. We know that those figures are going up. So how much is the expense that we're going to be able to tolerate as the expense of purifying this water? That is the second concern. The first one being health. The second one is the cost to our citizens, and therefore the increase in prices of water simply because the budget has to allocate for the chemicals to clean this contaminated water.
For sure. That is a need. That is something that has been going on. Now, when we talk about secondary water source, we have been dealing with finding a new secondary water source for several years now. And how long have you been involved with the city of Laredo in talking about this issue?
Personally, I've been involved probably for the last 3 to 4 years. First, I came as an information gathering, going to city council meeting, and then to the assigned secondary water committees that were appointed by the city council. So for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been coming to the city of Laredo to find out the actual costs, and now we all know that. The city council members know it, our county commissioners know it, and the citizens know it because of the increases in price of water and trying to make this potable water a reality. So we have to look at that because it's costing us too much. When secondary water is available to the city and the county from a very viable, sustainable source within the area that could be made available if our city government accepted it.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. James, you've been concerned about this and you sit in several committees. What have you seen that is lacking for the attention gathering towards secondary water source?
Lacking in the attention gathering, I don't think it's a problem, Paul. I think the problem is the independent club, the old politics of Laredo that still have control of Laredo politics. Bottom line, City of Laredo conducted studies through private companies that they hired to find the best source of secondary water. When they didn't like the answer that they paid for, that they got, they moved on to someone else where they got the same answer. The Rio Grande is sustainable now. It can go dry in as little as 8 years, as many as the next 50 years. Maybe less, maybe more, somewhere in between. We do know that the drought conditions of our region of the world are starting now. We've had less than 2 inches of rain in Laredo this year. We had 1 inch in the last 2 days. Something to think about. We don't have a water emergency in Laredo because water's still coming out of the faucet. My question is going to be, what's going to happen when you open that faucet and you can't even bathe with it or cook with it? What's going to happen to the poorest people of our community? They don't have the means or the financial resources to go buy water. We need secondary water now. The colonias need secondary water now. We can pipe this water straight to them now. Are there more than one source? Yes. Do we have the best source available? It's there. The opportunity is there. We have to change the independent club in Laredo. They don't call themselves that anymore, but they're still in control. Mayor Martin's family is still in control of politics and the underworld of politics in Laredo. Bottom line. And everyone knows it, from the Texas Rangers to the FBI to every citizen that accepts it or doesn't. We know where it comes from and why it's there.
Now, with all that changing, this proposal has already gone through the city?
Yes, sir, it has.
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
This proposal went before the city council almost a decade ago.
Okay.
When the city of Laredo put out a RFP, means a request for proposal for different companies or whomever has water available to sell to the city of Laredo. When the RFP went out, there were about 8 or 10 respondents, different companies that claimed that they had enough water. However, as it turned out, the hydrologists, the people that know about water, where to get it, how to get it, is it sustainable, do we have water reserves, etc. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent to make studies to see whether all this organization that claimed to have water to sell to the city, it was determined that dimmit utility was the best source of water because it could sustain the water requirements of the RFP. It had the best value of it. It would not interfere with any other water source. It was available in the area, and the experts like Mr. Norris was one of the top hydrologists in the state of Texas, the same organization that wrote the laws for the Texas Water Development Board. They determined that dimmit utility was the most feasible organization that could provide the best water, the best price, the most sustainability, and it's right here in our backyard.
On that note, was there ever a contract entered between dimmit water and
The request for proposal requires that companies apply in response to that, and then the board, the city council rather, votes on who should get this contract. The city decided that dimmit utility was the most eligible organization to provide the needs of Laredo at that time. The city government, but through its lawyers and the lawyers for our organization, through the financing people, etc., determined that it was feasible to accomplish this goal and wouldn't interfere with anything else that the city government wanted. However, the contract was frozen. It was not thrown off the table, it was not thrown away, it was just determined that it would be frozen until something else happened. Whatever that something else was never determined, was never advised. And to this date, we as dimmit utility are still ready, willing, and able to fulfill that obligation.
with that contract?
With a contract that we won the RFP, it's just that the city has never responded to that.
Understood. Understood. Have you heard of any of this going on?
Yeah, I've been involved for several years now also, and I don't do this for any kind of gain. Haven't gotten 1 red cent, don't expect any. I do it because I'm born here. I was born here, Old Mercy Hospital. I was raised here on the west side. I'm a product of Martin High School. I don't have my daughter live here or my grandkids live here because, well, water is one of the main issues. You know, in my family, I've lost 6 people to some type of cancer, including my grandmother, my uncle, my aunt, and another aunt just recently passed a couple weeks ago. And I kind of put all that blame on city utilities and water because that's the only source we have. You know, we used to drink from the manguera when we were growing up. Now I don't even want to, you know, hose down when I'm playing with my nieces or nephews que el agua de Laredo, le tengo tanto miedo así, because I know what it takes to clean it. I sit on the utilities committee. I've had conversations with me on how much they spend just to clean it. The particles per million is still high, to me off the charts, but it's clean, clear water. You think, a toda, here's some agua fresca, algo. Te estás envenenando, en mi opinión. Can we find a secondary water source that could be our primary? Most definitely. Can we save the Rio Grande and stop taking its water? Most definitely. Can we help farmers in our area all around us? Most definitely. Can we create jobs? Definitely. Can we create wealth in our community again because of the opportunities of secondary water? Definitely. Why anyone would stop this in its tracks the way they have for the last almost 10 years makes no sense to me unless you don't want outsiders here. But baby, every day the city grows with outsiders. They're coming in, we cannot stop it. The old mentality, the small thinking, no matter how much wealth they have, they got tiny brains because they're not realizing that they can hook into the secondary water system, and we're gonna not just bring water to Laredo. My hope is to bring water to South Texas. Alice, Freer, Benavides, San Diego, Valfurias, Edinburgh, McAllen, all of these places need secondary water too. Brooks County, Jim Hogg County, tons of farming, no water. What if we kicked up the farming industry right now? Industrial farming.
You know, there's right now my concern is Webb County.
Yeah.
in Laredo, what are we gonna get to our secondary water source? This same deal can be shipped over to South Texas, bypass Laredo and Webb County completely. So that's a different issue. The issue is what happened here, because I know they ended up with some water plant, the Pico or something like that. Now, who knows what's going on with that? Now I hear about lawsuits and they're trying to sue. The problem is that we need a secondary water source for the future. If we want our city to grow, that's what we're gonna need. Because there's a lot of companies that are gonna say, you know what? We need water to sustain the company, employees, and so on and so forth.
Well, I for one, Paul, have been working diligently trying to bring any kind of industry to my community.
Sure.
I've worked with several different people. The biggest problem, the reason they don't come is lack of infrastructure. Water, sewer systems is a big part of it. Trash, where are we going to dispose of it? Stuff like that. We have 3 giant, humongous hills of trash currently, and people are fighting the answer to get rid of that and to build something new. I'm sure we're going to find people fighting secondary water because historically it's the Rio Grande. Lo quieren tanto, they love the river so much, but yet they really don't want to save it. You know, we'll look at international study centers. You know, do you really want to save the Rio Grande? Do you want to make it better? Then we need to stop drawing water from it and start finding other solutions to it if we want to have our river. And I love my river, but you know what? I can't go fishing by the railroad bridge no more because the fish come out with sores. The sewer plant is right by where we pick up water on Jefferson Street. Our part of the little river there, I wouldn't throw rocks in it. You know, I wouldn't eat an animal that swam in it. I mean, I feel bad for the people that are trying to get here to make a life here that have to go through that because it's that disgusting.
I understood. And I'm gonna change it a little bit over to Mr. Sines. And what is the next steps that are going on? What do you see in the near future that dimmit water source is gonna be moving forward?
Well, our hope is that the need for water, as we just found out this week, that the governor of the state of Texas has declared Webb County a disaster area because the lack of rain, the lack of water. And like Mr. James just said, it's affecting the agriculture and the farmers because the animals don't have the hay, they don't have the water tanks are drying up, etc.
Livestock's gonna go down?
And people don't realize, but when that happens, the price of beef, the price of whatever, cabrito, etc., goes up because they have to feed these animals from purchased sources. So it is an economic thing. And this is something we have to consider, that the costlier it gets for water, the price of water, the availability of water. So we expected, as we have met as late as maybe a year ago, the dimmit utility met with some officials of the city to see where we could move forward on this. Our bankers came down and they're still ready to finance this project. And it's become now a humanitarian thing. Humanitarian thing simply because the availability of water is costing the livelihood of people every day, dollar per dollar, is getting more expensive to live in Laredo. About 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we had a lot of investors, we had a lot of developers that went up to City Hall, and the City Council approved the sale of bonds to develop the city, hopefully have some infrastructure that would help. Sure. But it also indebted the citizens by over $180 million. And it's costing the price of water to go up approximately 2.5%, residential and more so for commercial, just to provide the resources that are needed. And this is costing the citizens for the next 20 years an increase in their water rates of over 2.5%.
Absolutely. And you're going to start seeing a lot of hikes come up between now to next September 1st because of something our governor passed, our state passed a law. We will change, but we don't need to talk about that. What I want to talk about is, let's say next week the city says, okay, let's start it off. What's the time range of the company that can get the water here, get it working? Because it can't just flow into the regular pipes. Does it go somewhere else and flushes out? How is that going to be?
Well, Our organization, Dimmit Utility, is ready to bring in a water pipeline from the water source, which is probably one of the best water sources in the entire United States. Pure drinking potable water. And all you have to literally, all you have to do is add the state requirements of TCEQ, the minimum requirement of chlorine, just because those are state regulations. We are ready to come in here and bring in our pipelines and connect it at whatever point the city government wants us to connect it. Whether it's on the north side, the south side, part of the arrangements that over a decade ago, almost a decade ago, we were willing to put up 2 water towers so that water could be distributed throughout the city at every point possible. And at that time, we're still ready right now to sit down with the city attorneys, the co-interim directors, and just sit down and work out the details, the when, the where, and the how.
Understood.
Because the arrangements are there, all it's just a willingness of the city government to vote for it and say, hey, look, let's sit at the table, let's work out the details, how soon you can get it here, how soon we can turn on the faucets and get good potable drinking water.
Yes, because I've heard all kinds of stuff. I've heard desalination, taking unpotable water. I've heard another councilman had said, let's get water that's not drinkable and we'll clean it out of.
Yeah, because we've never had problems like that, like Rio Bravo getting E. coli. Yeah, we've never had problems with cleaning water in Laredo to trust it to that point. I call them fools, and I'll do it publicly, I'll do it to their face, and I have, and I'll do it again. How are we gonna take wastewater and treat it and give it back to our people when we couldn't take river water and clean it and give it to our people?
You're absolutely correct. So, when you start seeing this type of action, even though other cities might be doing it, that is not best for our community.
No.
Okay, that our community is gonna say no. So I think what needs to happen is the city needs to come down and say, what is the best thing? Which is the best option? Which one is fruitful for the longevity wise? Okay, because when you talk about secondary water source, we're talking about
Sustainability.
how long is this gonna be? Is it gonna be 50 years, 60 years, 100 years, 125 years, etc.? Because if you don't want it for it to be 10 years, all of a sudden we're gonna have to look for a third source of water.
And you're
Understand what I'm
correct,
saying?
Paul.
So we need to find out what all this is going on because.
Well, the hydrology testing, and from what I've read is many studies, the hydrology testing that the city of Laredo paid for found that the Wilcox Aquifer could take no rain for 100 years and not be affected 1%. Think about that. 40 million gallons a day for 100 years, not a drop of rain, and this aquifer is affected about 1%.
I understand where that's coming from.
So sustainable yield is there from this source of water. I mean, so much so that other people backed out and said, you know what, we cannot supply the demand that Laredo is looking for. So this is your best option, Laredo. This is your best option. Me being a pessimist, reading into everything I could, found out that it is the best option.
You know, when something is proven scientifically, which is normally the role of a city government, consultants are hired
Sure.
to provide the best solution because they're the knowledgeable people. They are whether it's water, whether it's gas, whether it's whatever. These experts come back and they provide the adequate information, the research, the data that is required so that our elected officials can make the most reasonable decision. This has already happened here in Laredo. The experts have come in, the experts have verified. The city has paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to have this done by consultants that are in the business of water. Hydrologists know that where the water comes from, where the water goes to, what happens with rain, what happens with drainage, etc. And the experts have already spoken. And this is the irony of this whole discussion.
Yes.
That the experts have already been paid to do their job. They did their job and they came back and handed the bill of health and said, look, this is your solutions. And all that is documented publicly in the records of City Hall. And the delay is what? What is the delay for this? It is the interest of the citizens that are being concerned here.
You know, and if we have, as citizens, have to say, you know what, you all have to come up with a vote now. enough of this. You're talking about a decade ago. Enough of this.
Put it up for a referendum.
You know, let's go forward. You see, that's what I was getting at. What my understanding is next September, not this September, next September, anything over a certain amount that any municipality is going to come into, they have to bring it into a referendum. Period. Over, you're going to spend over, I don't know the amount, it's the state law, over 500,000 or 700,000. You have to put it for a referendum. It's no longer going to be like, oh, we all vote for this, you know, we want a, you know, space shuttle to be mounted on top of, you know what I'm saying?
Is to cut out corruption, to
Sure,
put it
yeah.
into the citizens' hands to make the choice, whether wrong or right. But giving the power back to the citizens, because we're electing officials that we feel, and at first they have the greatest of intentions. After a few weeks, a few months, whatever, most of them succumb to the corruption. I mean, and that's been a problem. The only one that's going to benefit from treating wastewater is going to be the politician proposing it and the company that's building the plant. The citizens are on the losing end of it. I'm tired of that. I want the citizens to be ahead.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir. We need to understand that this is the way I look at things. I don't think that corruption exists. Okay, I don't think none of them go in there with that intent.
No,
I
I
think
don't
what
think so.
happens is that they go in there, they need to find, all of a sudden they realize a year down the road, you know what, I better start making my campaign for my next runoff because I want to get this project done. It hasn't been done, and all of a sudden they start caring more about getting the funds for their next campaign than actually what they started doing.
That's correct.
And that's where you start losing a lot of these individuals. But the majority of the council that I know, and the majority of the public officials, I know them personally, and I think they're individuals are great. I just think that a lot of things are going on around there that somewhere along the line somebody lost it back then, and now they don't know how to catch that ball. What I'm thinking, have you all proposed the same idea to other communities, and how have they responded to this?
You know, we're fortunate that we have a democratic type of government in our city. And because of our elected officials, they appoint committees to research and see what is best for this secondary water source.
Absolutely.
A couple of months, almost a year ago, there was a committee assigned called the Secondary Water Committee. Then it was changed the name to Utility. And they were asking the members of those committees to research what is available, what can we do. And through the Texas Water Development Board, which is a statewide organization, we decided to send some members of these committees to the city of Corpus Christi, which was a regional meeting, and half of the state of Texas was there as far as people that represent water entities. And those individuals found out that the water that is being offered by dimmit Utility is the best solution for Laredo. But among that, we have been talking to other communities like Edinburgh, McAllen, Corpus Christi, etc. And these communities have found out that the offer that we're making Laredo is extremely reasonable, well positioned to satisfy all the needs of Laredo. And right now, other cities are looking at taking advantage of the secondary water source, which we're in the middle of negotiating with whomever takes this water.
Absolutely. What I see, you see, we need secondary water source. And I would hate for Laredo to lose an opportunity like this because they're still stumbling around trying to figure out what they're trying to do, or to see, you know, if a nefarious reason comes around the corner and they say, oh yeah, that's the one we're gonna take, and all of a sudden that doesn't occur. 5, 6, 7, 10 years from now, you all went to another city and say, we have to pay that city to pay us, or we have to pay them for water that we're gonna drink, instead of us bringing it here and outsourcing it out. Could that happen?
Yes, absolutely could happen. And we're currently in the process of negotiating with other cities like Corpus Christi, Edinburgh, maybe even Brownsville. They've shown an interest in our water project.
Sure.
Because they need the water, up and down.
We all
We all need the water.
And that is a proven error that whomever does not take on this water they will have to be paying even higher prices for this water. And even then, if that particular city wants to fulfill the demands of their water needs, they could dismiss their primary source of water and use the secondary water which was available to the city of Laredo, and this different cities would be eligible to sell you the water, the city of Laredo, at a much higher cost. So water is not going down in price. It's becoming a very expensive commodity.
But think about what he just said, Paul. Laredo would absorb this utility company and sell the water further to other communities. Would we be in debt as much as we are if we're paying back the debt? No. Is it a positive in every way for this community, Laredo? Yes, for Webb County and Laredo and its citizens and the counties around it. And I know that a lot of people just think about, de donde soy yo, where am I? Well, I think more about my region. So yes, other cities can come in and take this. Laredo will, if they pass this up, be buying water from a secondary water source that takes the deal, regardless of where it's at. We will be paying whatever they demand. We will not be setting standards. We will be under someone else's thumb as to what we do if our water from the Rio Grande becomes so contaminated that we can't use it no longer.
Absolutely.
Now, in this last meeting in Corpus Christi, I was invited by Mr. Science to go, and I thought I was going to go learn more about water. No, I learned about finance. A lot of financing is available only for secondary water. Now, I think this might be something that our local politicians don't know about yet, and I've tried to tell each and every one of them in person, face to face, about this. Some of them don't care, some of them are extremely interested, but there's almost $5 billion available only for secondary water. So that means whatever pipeline comes in, if it's Mr. Ivy's and Dimmit Utilities, South Texas Heritage, they have private funding for what they're doing, and all of this state money would be water towers, pipes, reservoirs, infrastructure for this, infrastructure for that, if it has to do with secondary water. I think the other communities in South Texas are listening and paying attention and are making greater offers or taking advantage of this water. Now, if we were to start today, it's still 3 years before we get that first drop of water here. Because in the first phase, we're looking at about 76 to 100 miles of pipeline from where it's at.
That was my next question. That was a question I was saying. If the city said, okay, let's go with this plan, when would we have the first cup to drink of water?
James is absolutely correct. It would take 2 to 3 years, and of course, it's like any other construction project, whether it be a highway or a building, etc. You know, you can work overtime, you can push the project and get it here sooner, but there's only so many hours in the day. But yes, that is very possible that that's the kind of time frame we're looking at.
But one thing about this time frame, you got to think there'll be no change orders because the city's not involved in building the pipeline. It's already privately funded. Someone else is doing this. It is in their best interest to get the water here as quickly as possible at a means of zero loss or as close to zero loss as possible. And that's one thing to look at. Bringing this pipeline creates hundreds of jobs for our local citizens.
That's an absolute. But here's my next question. Do you all already have all the property owners
right away
from them, or is there still trouble? Has that already been taking place? Or?
No, the construction of this pipeline is a utility company which was created under the laws of the state of Texas through the Water Development Board. We have the eminent domain rights. We can take a choice of either taking the most probable right-of-way, which could be following the highways, because you automatically get those right-of-ways if you go that route. But if there's a route that we could take that would get it here faster in a more direct way, we have eminent domain rights as a utility company under the laws of the state of Texas to use and exercise that right so that we could get it here faster and sooner. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that it is covered. It is covered. You know,
not
it's
just
not something that we're going to start now, and all of a sudden you end up with a property owner that says, you know, we're going to court.
They've been dealing with this for about 10 years and worked everything out. This seems to be the best. Plus, most of the landowners, whether they're involved or not, see it as a benefit. Whoever gets water out of this aquifer, Wilcox Aquifer, and this pipeline, has a meter on their property. City of Laredo is not going to pay for one cent, nothing until the first water comes out. And then they're only paying X amount per 10,000 gallons, a million gallons, what have you. Along the way, if someone says, well, I need water, I'm gonna start farming, they can put a meter there and they can buy water also. The best part would be that Laredo would actually absorb the utility company. That, why they didn't take this 10 years ago blows my mind, because here's an opportunity for the community, for the municipality, the incorporated city, to profit and not always be in the hole, not always going into debt, not always making bonds to come out ahead, but where the citizens would actually pay less, get something back, instead of just trying to take everything out of their pockets.
Absolutely. It feels great. We're almost running out of time. What else would you like to say?
No, I would just like to say that dimmit utility is ready to exercise, and I personally have been before the city council, and I told them that we have an obligation as the winners of that RFP, that if tomorrow the city council or the mayor decides we want to exercise that right, we are ready, we're willing and able. We have the finance and the other requirements needed for that, and it's up to the city to do. But in the meantime, this project could go elsewhere where it would cost the citizens of Laredo tons of money that they not necessarily have to spend.
Absolutely.
I'd like to mention this one thing. I was privileged enough to meet one of the high administrators from Corpus Christi. We won't say his name, don't want to cause him trouble, because they're really into this DSAL. But this gentleman had told me straight out, and this is the high administration for the city of Corpus Christi, if Laredo passed this up, they're basically committing suicide as a municipality, as an incorporated city. The benefit of controlling secondary water for not just Laredo, but for South Texas is incredible. The growth, I mean, the sustainable yield of this water is without measure, Paul. This is a benefit for every person that lives south of the Nueces River.
You know, I'm going to put it in this format, because what you're giving us now, we're the largest port. We just won that award. We're the largest port at venturing, okay? We have, from here it goes everywhere else, okay? We can be the port for water in South Texas.
Correct.
And we should take advantage of that.
We should.
And that to me is
You
something
know,
that needs to happen.
At the last city council meeting that I met, I was talking with the director of the Economic Development Corporation of Laredo. And they said, you know, we have just become the largest inland port in the United States. It used to be Los Angeles, now we're it. But guess what? We don't have suitable potable drinking water.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely, you see, and water is life. So I want to thank you for coming out here and explaining, and Mr. James, and for you all to, because a lot of people do not understand what's going on, okay? And sometimes even I believe that our city councilmen are being told, but they're not being told the full story, you know? And
Yeah.
hopefully they pay attention. Hopefully they understand. Hopefully they understand that we are in a crisis, and we are already in a drought situation and an emergency situation, so we have to wake up.
well, we want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to come in
Anytime.
and share this part of the story that the citizens of Laredo really have a need to do, and we thank you for giving us that opportunity.
Thank you for your enlightenment.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity to speak.
Now, folks, one thing that I've seen in the last couple of weeks, especially when school just started, people passing school buses. Let's
Stop that.
stop it now, because we don't know if the little boy, little girl's gonna cross the street. Pay attention, and it's by law, you have to stop on both sides. So until next time, peace.
you've ever wondered, if you ever had a clue what would happen if Batman, the Avengers, the X-Men fought the 47 Ronin, you will have great hitting, power strikes, and speed. This event will be known as the North Texas Stick Fighting Championships. It's open to all martial artists. This is where legends are formed, where they're forged, where they are founded. Sign up now. Call the number 956-401-4868 and look up the website at www.savate.biz. So remember, this is for serious martial artists. If you're not serious, sit back and whisper about the event. If not, we'll see you there. Gloves Off is always on point. Bringing you the best on current issues, community affairs, and the happenings around us. This segment of Gloves Off is brought to you by The Best, so pay them a visit. Check them out. This is Gloves Off.
Well. You're listening to Gloves Off with Professor Buitrón. Alright then, I say words on point, straightforward. No jibber jabber, everybody forward. Issues, facts and solution. Get it at Gloves Off with Professor Buitrón. Alright, one other thing is a revolution. Get it on point with Professor Buitrón. Gloves Off. No nonsense issues, politics, community. A better men follow reader. Gloves Off, a revolutionary show with everything that you need to know. With Professor Buitrón. Watch ya!